figured I'd stop by the car and show y'all what happened. And I also need to put some air in the slicks, so I don't have the regular tires on the car right now. So stop by here every couple of days just to make sure that it's all good, because it's just sitting here. But figured I'd, like I said, stop by and show y'all why it made 42 pounds of boost. All right, so there's the daily blacked out, of course. Here's the race car, and like I said, we're going to show you what happened. Excuse the mess. It's not a show car, it's a race car. All right, so first things first, I had some issues with my car not wanting to get on the two-step. So after it didn't want to get on the two-step, that didn't happen until we pulled the head off the car to change the head gasket, because when the car was on dyno, it actually started to, it wasn't making any power. So, and the car was on like 15 more pounds of boost than it was before. So I knew something was going on. Nigel thought it might have been possibly a slightly bent rod or something like that. And I didn't think it was, because the car ran fine. It felt fine. It sounded fine. So I had a feeling that it was possibly the head gasket. And the reason why is because the oil was mixing with, the fuel was mixing with the oil. So at first I thought it was just because the car is on E. It's gonna mix with oil like that. It's normal. Then I started thinking, after I changed the oil, flushed it out a couple of times, probably, I don't know, 6-8 times, it still was mixing with the oil, like not a blown head gasket type of look to it, but it was more like a, I don't know, it was like if you were to get a frappe at McDonald's with cream on it. That's kind of what it was doing. So after flushing the motor out, probably 6 to 8 times, it still kept doing it, and I couldn't figure out why. So that led me to believe that the head gasket was blown. At the time, the car was only on I think 21 pounds or 19 pounds, something like that. I did turn it up a little bit higher than that, not intentionally, but because the car has a boost lease on it, I tried to speed the rate up a little bit, to cut down to 60 foot and the 330, which it did help. And like I said, it still sounded normal, so I didn't really think anything of it. Well, after we got off the dyno, I went ahead and decided just to pull the head off, just to make sure that the head gasket was still good. And we pulled the head off. Everything seemed fine. The head is actually in really good condition, other than the cams, stock cams. They're trash. They look like straight crap. But the motor's got 200K on it, and it still had the original head gasket. It wasn't blown. You could see where the coolant was kind of sort of crossing over through the cylinders, but it actually was still a good gasket, I guess you could say. It was probably the worst gasket I think I've seen. So basically what was happening was the stock head bolts ended up lifting the head. So the head bolts ended up stretching and like I said, the head gasket never really actually let go. Coolant never really started leaking. It just started mixing with the oil. So after we did all of that, we put the car back together. Make a long story short, even though the story I just told is still long, the car didn't want to get on the two-step. Like, it would engage the two-step, but it would jump off the two-step and go to the rev limiter. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. Nothing changed, other than us having to pull the cam sensor plug off the car. So after doing that, that's when I realized, okay, we need to go back, retrace some steps. We looked over a couple of things and couldn't really figure it out. So I said, screw it, we're gonna go to the track anyway. And we ended up taking the car to it was Rudy's diesel event. It was supposed to be a test and tune that morning. I think it rained the day before, so they kind of pushed the event out, and they ended up doing like a late test and tune after the event. So we ended up going. I wanted to get the car back on the track because I wanted to take the record. I wanted to actually see how far I can really push this car. And I had, we just switched over to 13s on the front. So it was also the first time that I was going to be out with the car on 13s. So we had a little bit of time, when we got there. I think we got there around 2 o'clock. Testing didn't start till about 4:30. So we had a little bit of time to, look over the car and try to figure some things out. We also had just put, we also had swapped the clutch. Went from a spec stage 3 plus to a ACT 6-puck sprung with the HD pressure plate. Nothing too extreme. I didn't feel like the extreme pressure plate was really worth it, given that my car is, is pretty light, so it doesn't have to work as hard as, say, a full interior car does. It's a lot easier on the motor, a lot easier on the trans, a lot easier on the axles when you have a lighter car. So after going over the car for a little bit, about 30 minutes to an hour, Jared noticed that the cam magnet, or not the cam magnet, I'm sorry, the cam sensor actually wire, like, it only had, I don't know, maybe a strand or two holding it. And you can kind of see, I didn't solder anything. I'm, lazy like that, but it's a little blurry. But as you can see, it was only like a couple of strands on it. So I ended up splicing the wires, redoing it, and then we tested the two-step again, and it started working like normal. So at that point, we went up there to make a hit. The car did, it immediately blew the tires off. I think I was live at the time, but I'll do a screen record and post that video and show you the in-car view of how that pass went. So after blowing the tires off, and then the car kind of felt like it fell on its face in fourth gear. After that mishap passed, we brought it back to the pits, and we ended up, looking over some stuff. We turned the car way down. I think we turned it down to like 20 pounds. I went up there to make a hit, but it wasn't, a full-blown, full send hit. I basically kind of just, staged the car with the guy that was beside me. Didn't get on the two-step or anything. I basically just kind of, left the line like I was leaving the stoplight, and ended up basically just, getting it in second. I hit it in second just to kind of see where the boost was at, that because the car had, a little bit heavier load on it than it would in first. So, I did a 2-3-4, and the car ended up, I think it made like 22, 23 pounds, like that when we turned it down to 20. So at that time we thought, okay, we slowed the boost rate down, we turned the boost down, and the car, it was doing what we were telling it to do. Well, that wasn't the case. Basically, you can't really see it because it's on the back side, but you can see there's zip ties right here. There's one there, there's another one right here, but basically what was happening was the air intake temp sensor had blew itself out when the car made 42 pounds on the first pass. When it was spinning through all the gears, when I hit fourth, it basically came out. And I didn't realize that, so when we made that second pass, the car actually, you know, it felt like it was doing what we were telling it to do, but that wasn't the case. Because that grommet came out, the car basically acted like, you know, it was under control, and basically it was just a huge boost leak. So we ended up taking some electrical tape, wrapped it around the sensor, because the grommet disappeared somewhere. I'm pretty sure somewhere in the motor, because I couldn't find it in the charge pipe anywhere, or it might be somewhere on the track, but being, you know, that it was that much boost, I'm pretty sure it ended up somewhere in the motor. It's gone now. So we electrical taped it, and then we put some zip ties around it to kind of hold it in there. I still went and made the hit. The car made 40 something pounds again. It ended up going 1050 at 133 mile an hour. And basically what happened was the air intake temp sensor came out in fourth gear, which is why the mile an hour was down. So if you ask me, I say that pass would have possibly been like a 1035 or 1036 pass if it would have stayed in there. The 330 wasn't that good. I think it was a 463 to the 330. The 60 foot was a 178, and the 8th mile, I think it was a 688 at 109. So the mile an hour to the 8th mile was still the same as the record pass. It just didn't have it out back. After all of that, we ended up fixing it again, jacked the car up, put it back on. We put 2 zip ties on there this time, and we went and made another hit. At this point, we realized that the car had no boost control. It wasn't doing anything we were telling it to do. And, you know, worst case scenario, what's the worst that can happen? It blows up. Well, if it blows up, I'm not really too much concerned about it. I told all my friends and, you know, the race team that if something ever happened to the motor while I was trying to get the record, then I'm not gonna, you know, put another stock motor in the car to try to get the record. You know, it's important to me, but it's not that important to me to the point where I want to keep paying, you know, X amount of dollars for, you know, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stock long blocks. So that's not something that I want to do. So 1 attempt is all I was going for. If something was to happen to that motor, then that was going to be it. If something did happen, I do have another bottom end that's ready to go. I also have a set of Wesco pistons, however you say it, northern, southern. They are 8:8 to 1 compression ratio. They have new rings. It's 20 over. The block is also 20 over, and is actually a Jasper block. So this is going to end up being the build motor. Need to clean it up a little bit, pull the crank out of it. I might end up using the crank out of my stock motor, but you know, I don't know yet. We'll see how long that motor lasts or what happens with that. So, you know, when I'm ready to put that together, then it'll go in the car. But I'm not going to pull the stock motor out of the car until it lets go. So if I can potentially, you know, push the record further or get the car to go, you know, 1020s or the teens with the stock long block, then that's what I'm going to do. So there's no point in pulling the motor out of the car when it's still running and it's perfectly fine. I think I'm going to do a compression test on it just to kind of see where everything's at. I know the motor's tired, but she's not running like she's tired. So I'm gonna keep pushing it. All right, so basically what ended up happening, you know, like I said, we made that hit and the car went 1034 at 139. Because the front half was so crappy, you know, I short shifted first gear. I knew it was going to spin like that. I tried to hold it out a little bit. I clicked third, and I felt it in the car, you know, that the tires were shaking, or however you want to call it. To me, it felt like tire shake. But the car was actually, you know, making power around third gear. So I felt it in the steering wheel. I felt it in the seat. I stayed in it. I clicked fourth gear, and as soon as I grabbed fourth, the car immediately tried to spin. You can hear it in the video, and whenever it tried to spin, I pedaled it one time, and I stuck it again, and then it actually hooked. So when I stuck it, I just laid into it, stayed into it. At the end of the finish line, when I let off the throttle, the car actually blew the coupler off. So it made a, you know, pretty big bang, loud sound. I thought the motor let go because it actually started smoking on the top end. But motor was still lit. So after I get the car to the shop, kind of look over everything, make sure the car was good, come over here, start it up, make sure it's straight. Basically what had happened, which is why the car had no boost control, my push lock line, let me zoom in here, you can kind of see like a little dust ring a little bit, but basically my push lock line wasn't in there, and like it was just out. So even if I push it in now, it's supposed to lock, and it's not. It's all the way in and it's not locking. So my push lock fitting basically said, screw you, I'm gonna exit the chat. And the car was just basically making everything that this S257 could make. And that's how we ended up making 42 pounds. So 42 pounds is the most boost that this S257 can make. I think it flashed 43 a couple of times. And of course, you know, with that much boost, it was nothing but hot air coming through turbo. So it was basically pointless to be on that much power. The car was not tuned for that much boost. It's honestly good for about 32, 33 pounds, being that the car is on CO2 and a boost leash. It still got 3-bar map, as you can see. But yeah, I mean, it made 5 or 6 passes like that on 42 pounds of boost. We couldn't really figure out what was going on. We just knew we had no boost control. So that is how the car ended up making 42 pounds of boost. And she's still living, you know. Like I just pulled it out of the shop, getting ready to air up the slicks again. And I need to get some stuff done to it, some stuff that I need to do that I haven't done yet. And it's nothing, you know, fancy about the car. The car is just, it's just like, you know, gutted doors, like I said, windows. Still has the stock seat. I still have the sound deadening in the car. I got the battery up front for weight purposes. And then all my CO2 stuff, boost leash, and my CO2 bottle is right there. So it's behind the dash. So nothing fancy, you know. It does have a fuel cell. So I kind of put that back there to kind of, you know, wall it off. That way it's not in the cabin. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Nothing fancy. She's almost empty, not quite. So yeah, you know, it's just a lightweight car, tuned by the best guy on the planet, and that's basically it. So hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna take the car back out. I already have a new fitting on the way for the push lock line, and the next time that you see this car out, it'll be with my buddy Jared when he gets his car back. And then we're gonna try to see if we can replicate the same pass, if not go faster. I believe the car is going to go faster because I'll have a lot more control on the launch, a lot more control to the 330. This car, best 60 foot was a 164. It usually 60 foot's pretty good. So if I can get that straightened out, get the front half done, and get everything like how it's supposed to be, then You know, who's to say that we can't push this thing to go 1020s? As far as making the car go 45 pounds, or not 45 pounds, but as far as making the car go 42 pounds of boost again, I definitely don't see that happening no time soon, unless it's with the built motor that is going to go in the car. But as far as the stock motor goes, you know, it served its purpose. I'm proud of it. You know, I drove this car around for 3-4 years before I had the chance to do what I did to it. So once I got my Jeep, I immediately took this off the road and started turning it into a track only car. So, you know, like I said, we'll see what happens, and stay tuned and catch me on the next one.